Hello and welcome to Swiftly Spoken, and welcome back to the third instalment of our monthly celebration of Taylor Swift's 11 studio albums. In this episode, we're going to be exploring Speak Now Taylor's version, track by track, as we already have a dedicated series in which we deep dive into the backstory behind every single song from Taylor's third album. Today, we're going to be discussing curious, niche, or just simply fun facts for all of the standard, deluxe, and vault tracks. So Speak Now, as I mentioned, is obviously Taylor's third studio album, and some interesting things to note before we dive into each individual song and some little fun facts is that Speak Now itself is obviously totally self-written, and the premise behind Speak Now is basically that during the period between and during, I suppose, Fearless and then obviously the eventual release of Speak Now, there was moments and kind of very pivotal moments in Taylor's career personally and publicly where she wanted to speak up. Basically, Speak Now is full of songs that are moments where she wanted to say the truth and then therefore is doing so through song. And basically this allowed her to kind of find her voice and really develop her style and potentially kind of explore different styles that maybe she hadn't before. And it's obviously one of her most beloved albums, and with many songs having such vivid backstories and fan-related moments, some of which obviously include things like Long Live, Last Kiss, Enchanted, and obviously Sparks Fly, which has a very long history. And if you are interested in Speak Now as an album and its individual songs, a while ago we had a kind of mini-series where it was like Speak Now Stories, where we had lots of kind of episodes deep diving into individual songs and Speak Now as an album. So if you are a Speak Now fan or just want to hear more, then definitely check those out. We deep dive into especially things like Sparks Fly and Last Kiss, mega deep dives into lyrics and history. So yeah, definitely check those out if you're a Speak Now fan.
I think with Speak Now is that it is such like a vivid album, like you said, but also it's the album from which we kind of like know the public backstories to almost every song, which is something that obviously as time went on, Taylor would do less interviews or would leave less kind of blatant clues as to exactly what a song was about, which I get, obviously makes sense. But a lot of these songs are so earnest and are so laying out the whole truth that you can actually like pinpoint them to dates, as with Last Kiss, as with a few other ones, to be honest, as well. And I think that's so fun about Speak Now, and I think that's why we've done so many episodes on it. It has so much going on in the background.
There's so much to kind of like delve into. And I think also, as I'm sure I've kind of said before on one of our previous Speak Now episodes, is that because it is totally self-written, bar one deluxe track that I'm sure we'll get into, it means that nothing is like diluted and it's all Taylor's like opinion. It's just her, that is all her physical opinion, no one else's influence.
Very unfiltered.
That's why it's
very laid bare.
Totally unfiltered, very raw, exactly, yeah. And I think that's why it's so vivid and the stories are so clear, because there's just no dilution of someone else's experience or perspective. It is all her perspective and from her kind of voice, which I suppose is probably why it is so beloved by fans as well, because it is so Taylor and that it is her. And and both of us are big Speak Now fans. Love Speak Now. And I feel like Speak Now for me was one of the first eras where I felt properly involved in like the lead single and watching it properly unfold, because, internationally, Fearless wasn't really pumped out properly on an international audience till around 2009, when most of the kind of lead up and singles and stuff had kind of been out in the world, and therefore they were kind of I took that album as like a body of work, you know what I mean, as one.
Yeah, I get that, yeah.
Whereas like Speak Now was the kind of first album where we kind of slowly saw it being released, and
the unfolding really kind of the single kind of promo
lives. Exactly.
Yeah, that's true. It was obviously Fearless, like you said, it was a very pivotal moment. She had a lot of spotlight on her, and this was the unfolding of what happens after that, and we got to live through it bit by bit with her and see a lot of confessional songwriting. I think Speak Now was pivotal to how Taylor's songwriting developed over time. She also made it her goal to get better with a lot of different things, songwriting being one of them, performing being another. She worked very hard throughout this era, and I think that's something that she was very proud of, and she underlined quite a lot during the rollout of Taylor's version as well.
Yeah, definitely. But let's get into the tracks. So starting off, obviously, with track 1, Speak Now's lead single, obviously Mine. And interestingly with Mine, it was actually released earlier than planned due to a leak. It was originally planned to be released on August 16th in 2010. However, after a leak of basically a very low quality MP3 file of the song, Big Machine Records decided to ship the song to country radio and iTunes 12 days earlier than planned, which was on the 4th of August in 2010. It's got a really cool backstory as well, because Taylor was basically somewhere flying over the Pacific Ocean on a flight to Tokyo when her label called her, well, came over to her actually on the flight and was like, look, don't want to panic you, but basically the song's leaked. So then they decided, while she was literally in the air, to push it to country radio, rush release it onto iTunes. And basically Scott Bruschetta, the owner of obviously Big Machine, he basically was like, look, plans change, it's just the way of the world. But by the time that Taylor had landed, mine had gone #1 on iTunes, and Taylor said how she turned on her phone and her phone was kind of blowing up with all these texts saying congratulations. And I think she was kind of definitely, I think, a little bit annoyed about the leak, because it's obviously out of her comfort zone. And she said multiple times during this and 1989 that kind of leaks are like her worst nightmare. Artists often feel a bit robbed of like the experience of releasing it on their terms, but at least in the end it turned out positive, because the reaction was obviously very positive. And like I said, when she was literally in the air, it had already gone #1 on iTunes. But interesting backstory that it was kind of pushed forward, and I'm sure was a very nerve-wracking flight for Taylor and the Big Machine team, having to scramble and rush it out quickly before it basically spread like wildfire.
And make that snap decision, especially back then. Nowadays, obviously, Taylor has things pretty much locked down, but music does tend to leak at least a couple of days before, or has done at certain points.
And also, I think the process now is a little easier, because with streaming being like the main thing, and there's not really physical CDs or anything like that, that it is it might not be, but from a outsider's perspective, it appears a little easier to have more surprise releases, whereas back then
you had to have everything, all the ducks in a row. Yeah, exactly.
You were stuck to a very strict promo cycle, and the CDs were coming out on this date, and you could go in stores and buy this and do that, and you had a interview on this day. That must have been terrifying, that you're basically starting off
almost 2 weeks early, really. Before.
Which is a long time.
It is for preparation, so it must have been very nerve-wracking, and I can understand why artists do get very emotional about these things happening when it is supposed to be like contained. But unfortunately these things happen, and like you said, it was luckily for Taylor for the best. Next up we have Sparks Fly, which, according to fans, Taylor has previously revealed that she revised many times. She actually said that she thought she had around 5 different versions of the song. And for more in-depth information about its original lyrics inspired by Halloween Night of 2006, the changes that she then made for the 2007 live performance of this song, and then the final perfected Speak Now version, as well as going over all of its touching backstory. If you are interested in any of that, then you can check out our episode dedicated entirely to this song. We are Sparks Fly #1 fans on this
Mega
podcast.
Fans, yes.
So we go right in depth, and I'd love to revisit it again at some point, because we were very excited to have like uncovered things, and now it would be fun again at some point, maybe in the future, to revisit it, because this song honestly is just, it has provided us with so much content over the years. I love the backstory,
and you are now part of its history as well, because you've heard it live.
Yeah, luckily I was very, very lucky to hear Sparks Fly live as well, so full circle in the end moment for us with this song.
So next is obviously Back to December. On the Speak Now World Tour, Taylor made a live lyric change to Back to December. So on the 28th of July in 2011, Taylor obviously played Back to December acoustically on the piano. It was like mashed with Apologise and You're Not Sorry, and basically she changed the lyric during the kind of bridge to the lyric I'm about to say, which is, I'd go back in time and change it, but I can't, so this is for the boy from Michigan. And this is obviously a reference to Taylor Lautner, whom the song is dedicated to, as indicated by the secret message, which is Tay. If you are interested in live lyric changes, then definitely check out our episode where we spoke about all of the really cool times that Taylor changed lyrics live on stage, and this was one of them, and one of our favourites, because it was she hasn't really done this a lot, so when she does do it, it's very, very cool, and especially this direct of a call out.
The chaos it causes. Really
fun fact.
It's very...
Yes, definitely.
Karma is the guy on the Chiefs coded, it really is.
Yes, that first time, you saw it in the dancers on stage, like the shock, and in the very kind of dodgy recorded video from 2011, even the fans like scream because they're like, what? They're like, oh my god. But yeah, very, very cool live lyric change for Back to December.
Next up, we have the title track, Speak Now. And this one is a very interesting one because I am part of this. I'm not sure if you are too, Cameron, but for such a long time, I don't know why, in my head, Speak Now felt like it had a music video, and I'm not the only one. Apparently many fans have reported that they remember Speak Now having a music video. Some people even say that this could be like a Mandela effect example, or maybe it's because of certain things coming together and forming these fake memories in our minds. One of these things is the album photo shoot, which is so like vivid. It feels very like plucked out of an MV, to be quite frank. Like,
no, it definitely does. That frozen moment with all of her band, and also the Speak Now photo shoot is so cool because each song was given its own like mini photo shoot.
Yes, it's such a visual representation of the songs, which the songs are very visual anyway because they're so descriptive.
And that photo shoot also had a behind the scenes where her band and her are kind of interacting and messing around. So I think also that might have potentially led people to believe it, because there's like a behind the scenes video that they probably think is a behind the scenes for a music video, but it's for a photo shoot.
Moreover, we also have that very infamous New Girl appearance. So New Girl is obviously a series. Taylor was on it, had a cameo on season 2 episode 25, which season 2 came out like in 2012, 2013. So Taylor was very red coded, to be honest. She had already had her hair done. She was rocking a new style, but it just adds to it because what Taylor does in that scene is basically she interrupts a wedding. So it's still very Speak Now-esque. And I think that adds to that kind of idea of seeing Taylor interrupting weddings, which is funny, because now we also have I Bet You Think About Me, which is very, again, it is Speak Now, but redified.
Music video. Yes, exactly, yeah.
And finally, also the visuals of the song on the tour performances for Speak Now World Tour were also very visual. They also kind of like stick in people's minds. So it's kind of like the mix and mash of all this together make it feel like perhaps Speak Now had a music video, but no, officially it did not.
Next is obviously track 5, Dear John, and for a long time this was actually the longest song in Taylor's discography, coming in at around 6 minutes and 45 seconds. Now obviously it's second place after All Too Well 10-minute version. Another interesting fact about this song is while there are many alleged rumours that John Mayer basically wanted to seek legal action over this song, there is no real proof that this ever actually happened. However, he did comment that he thought that the song was cheap songwriting. But what is interesting to note is nearing the re-release, Taylor made a comment at the Eras tour before playing this song, asking for people not to interact with the possible muses for this song, and that she merely purely likes the song because it is just a good song.
Up next is Mean, and thanks to this song, Speak Now actually has a Grammy. This is the only song from the album that does have a Grammy. It actually has 2. It won both the 54th Grammy Awards Best Country Song and also Best Country Solo Performance. Unfortunately, Speak Now didn't go on to win anything as a whole or any other songs from that album either, but thanks to this one in specific, which is also kind of very full circle moment if you know about like the backstory behind this song. It must have been very moment for Taylor where she felt very vindicated.
Yes, oh yeah, definitely. The fact that the reason that this song exists is because of a performance at the Grammys, for you to then win Best Country Song and then perform it at the Grammys and be praised for that performance must be very, very vindicating. So next is track 7, The Story of Us, and interestingly the music video for The Story of Us was filmed at the Vanderbilt University in Nashville in Tennessee, and specifically the main locations that were kind of used for the music video was the Central Library and the Alumni Hall. And what is interesting is during an interview, Taylor said that the video shoot encountered lots of problems. Lots of tornadoes were basically hitting Nashville while they were trying to film the music video, and often Taylor does have disastrous, especially during those Fearless, Speak Now, she had lots of disastrous weather when it came to music videos.
Track 8 is Never Grow Up, up. And funnily enough, this is one of the few songs that has been played as a surprise song on every single tour that it could be from the moment it was released. So for the Speak Now World Tour, it was played various times during shows in Lexington, Houston, Raleigh. Then on the Red Tour, it was played on May 11th, 2013 in Washington, D.C. As for the 1989 World Tour, it was played during the second show in Santa Clara, which was August 15th, 2015. For the Reputation Stadium Tour, it was played in Philadelphia on July 13th, 2018. And then finally, last but not least, during the Eras Tour, it was performed as a surprise song on July the 7th, 2023 in Kansas. And then it was also played again in Zurich on July 10th, 2024 as part of a mashup with Robin. And then once again for the last time in Vancouver on December 6th, 2024, mashed up with this time The Best Day. So funnily enough, like even though this song is kind of like under the radar, since its release, it has made it to all Taylor tours, which is fun.
Yeah, it's kind of, which not a lot of even some of the singles can say. So the fact that, yeah, it's kind of had its moment at every single tour clearly shows that Taylor definitely has a soft spot for this song, I think. So next is track 9, and that's Enchanted. And what's interesting is that Taylor decided to name her first perfume after this song, and she produced Wonderstruck the perfume in collaboration with Elizabeth Arden, and the packaging and charms, which involved a Moravian star, a dove, and a birdcage, were inspired by her furniture and decor in her Nashville apartment, which featured a physical birdcage, a pond with fish. It is a wild, wild apartment, so definitely check out it online if you haven't seen, because it is unbelievably Speak Now, and you can definitely see where the inspiration for Wonderstruck was pulled from, because it literally is just like a direct kind of like reference to that gorgeous apartment. And then interestingly, her second fragrance, named Wonderstruck Enchanted, followed in the footsteps of the album with a colour switch up from purple and then into red, whereas obviously Wonderstruck the standard edition was purple, the Wonderstruck Enchanted edition was red, similar to the standard edition of Speak Now, and then the deluxe edition of Speak Now.
Next we have another infamous song from Speak Now, which is of course Better Than Revenge. This is the shortest song on the album, but it packs a punch and is quite controversial. It's become well known due to mainly the lyric change, which is something that we spoke about probably for a year straight, or even two, from the time that Taylor kind of announced the Taylor's versions to it actually releasing. Was she going to change a specific lyric or not? Eventually she did. However, it's not the only song that has had an official lyric change after release. Other ones include Picture to Burn, or even Me, that had a lyric completely taken away.
Next is track 11, Innocent. And this has only ever been played live a total of 2 times. So the first time was on September 12th in 2010 at the MTV VMA Awards, and this performance is very, 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 very symbolic because basically of the history of the song being inspired by Kanye's infamous interruption at the very same awards, making it a very full circle moment when Taylor went on to then perform the song at the award show only a year later. Performance starts with like a little clip of that infamous moment, and then it kind of glitching out, and then seeing Taylor in this kind of like makeshift house, and then she kind of breaks out barefooted. It's a very, very cool performance, and at the time was quite a rare performance, and I feel like a little bit of a kind of slightly undiscovered and underrated performance. It's one of
them rogue ones,
the radar a bit.
Yeah, because it wasn't a main single, and it wasn't like a big moment that was like a lot of promotion like around that song in specific. It was and for a long time the only performance, so that was quite undiscovered. Yeah,
until November 24th, 2023, 13 years later, interestingly, at the Eras Tour in Brazil, she then played it while obviously going back through her back catalogue as a surprise song. So yeah, only 2 performances of Innocent.
From one interesting performance to another, next up for Haunted, the fact is that to celebrate the release of Speak Now, there was a special that aired on NBC around Thanksgiving in 2010, and it was called Taylor Swift ... Speak Now, and it featured a live performance from Taylor and her band, The Agency, of Haunted from the house featured in the film Psycho at the Universal Studios in Hollywood. Another fun fact for Haunted, and kind of like going back to December as well, Haunted's orchestration was arranged by Paul Bucketmaster, who also worked on Back to December, and I think both of them are very haunting for different reasons. Taylor really wanted to reflect the intensity of emotions. Back to December, very sad, snow falling, tears drying on, and Haunted, that arrangement, honestly, like it does elevate the song to another level, and it really does show a lot of those chaotic emotions coming through.
And I think as well, kind of re-referencing that NBC special, that is probably one of my favourite things that Taylor's done in terms of like promotion, because she kind of did these like really cool performances for each of the songs in very different places. And my favourite is the Long Live one on the bus with all the fans. It was like a surprise performance where she kind of like rocked up on this like Speak Now double-decker bus and performed Long Live, and it's one of the coolest performances. So there's also a really cool performance of like The Story of Us, which I think she did like overlooking the Empire State Building. Mean also has a really cool performance. Definitely check that out if you haven't, because the Haunted one is really, really cool as well, like you said, in the Psycho film. It's very dramatic. Her hair is very like frizzed out and it's all like red and very, you know, drama, but it's really, really cool, special. Oh, another cool one, Back to December in Central Park. That is like an elite,
very iconic one.
Absolutely, yeah.
And we all know the video from that day.
Yes.
Yeah, where someone shouts out, "I love Better Than Revenge," and Taylor like turns around and is like, "Thank you."
Thank you. Yes.
Very classic ancient text from the Speak Now era.
Yes. Next is obviously track 13, and that is Last Kiss. And Taylor would perform Last Kiss at the Speak Now World Tour acoustically, wearing her very infamous purple dress and obviously playing her koi guitar. And while the guitar has become synonymous with the Speak Now era, and obviously Taylor then brought it back out to celebrate the release of Speak Now, Taylor's version of the Eras Tour, it was actually gifted to Taylor by Bob Taylor of Taylor Guitars as a present to celebrate her debut album Going Gold. And there's actually only 100 of these guitars made, and if you're interested in a deep analysis of this song and its backstory and interesting kind of lyrical details, then definitely check out our episode dedicated to Last Kiss. But back to the guitar, that is probably my all-time favourite Taylor guitar, and I've saw someone, I believe, on TikTok that owns one of the 100.
Wow.
And yeah, I couldn't imagine. It's like, that would be a dream to own one. It's one of the most gorgeous guitars ever.
It's so pretty.
Has become synonymous with Speak Now.
It really has. To think that she had it before, you know, it epitomizes the Speak Now era.
Especially when you look at like Enchanted, the perfume, and that kind of referencing her Nashville apartment. You know, the koi,
and the kois,
the koi fish
exactly.
That she had. It all kind of fits in, doesn't it?
It does.
It's all very, yeah.
It does. And obviously the Eras Tour has now like cemented it 100%. Like this is the Speak Now guitar. Yeah. Which I love, because Speak Now gets so little of its own things. So at least it got that. So good for Speak Now for reclaiming that beautiful guitar. Next we have Long Live, and in 2012 Taylor released a new version of this song to promote the Brazilian live edition of Speak Now World Tour Live, and this version of Long Live features the Brazilian singer Paula Fernandes. We have spoken about this edition before in like our remixed song episode, and we both quite liked it. It is a fun one. It's a different one. Paula wrote and sung her own verses, and some of the lyrics include, so I'm translating here, there's a little part that she says like, facing a new era on the wave of a song, we built history, mind, soul and heart. Obviously all rhyming very nicely in English, not making as much sense, but it was a nice translation. I think she did a really good job with the music. I think it's very hard to translate songs because obviously you have to think about rhyming and the rhythm and timing of how all of the little syllables are going to fit in.
Yeah, no, I've always kind of quite liked this song and the kind of performance that Taylor did, where she was performing it and then like Paula was on like a screen, you know what I mean? It was like a pre-recorded thing. It's quite an interesting performance, but it was still very cool, and it was interesting that it was given, only really promoted and given any kind of life in Brazil while Taylor was kind of performing early Red era. But yeah, it was late Speak Now, kind of early Red. But yeah, no, I've always quite liked this song. It's definitely not a Bad Blood remix, but it's definitely not a Lover Shawn Mendes remix. It's kind of,
I think
nice
it's such a fun one because it's so left of field, like it's so different, and I think that's really fun
and totally kind of undiscovered. I don't know if it's on international like Spotify.
I don't think so.
I think it's kind of very much kind of within Brazil, really.
This song has another fun little bonus fact. So this song was also included in the soundtrack of a Brazilian soap opera named Avenida Brazil. So if anyone has seen that, let us know.
So finishing off with the standard track list of Speak Now, we're now moving into the deluxe track list, starting off with ours. And the first line that Taylor came up with for this song was, "The stakes are high, the waters are rough, and developed the song basically from that point on, wishing to create lyrics that sounded very whimsical and almost slightly nursery rhyme in parts. Another interesting fact about this is that she performed a very, very cool acoustic version of this song for the 45th CMAs in 2011, sitting on a sofa in a jumper and jeans. It was very casual but very, very cool. And another really, really good performance, if you're an Ours fan, is for the Harvey Mudd performance that she did. She performs at Ours, and it's probably one of my favourite. That whole show anyway is probably one of my favourite.
It's a good one.
Shows. The set list was solid, wasn't it?
It was a solid show, yeah.
It's a really cool show. Taylor's in a really good mood. She's quite funny and jokey and interacts loads with the crowd, and it's a really, really cool show. But that performance of Ours is also really, really cool.
From one deluxe track to another, we have Superman, and this one has only been performed live twice. Firstly, we have during the Speak Now tour, Taylor performed it on September the 24th, 2011 in Kansas. Then it was performed once again 13 years later as a surprise song on guitar at the Eras Tour in Tokyo, Japan on February the 9th, 2024.
So now track 17, we're moving into the vault tracks, and obviously the first vault track is Electric Touch. And what's also interesting, not only is it the first vault track, but it's also the first official collaboration on the main Speak Now album. Obviously second if you count the remix version of Long Live. However, that was never given a main album position. It was purely just kind of like a bonus CD that came with just the Brazilian edition of the Speak Now World Tour Live. And obviously it features Fall Out Boy, and while talking about this track and Fall Out Boy, Taylor said that since Speak Now was all about songwriting, I decided to go to the artists who I feel influenced me most powerfully as a lyricist at that time and ask them to sing on the album. And obviously that was then Fall Out Boy.
Next up we have When Emma Falls in Love, and of course the Emma that this song is rumoured to be about is Emma Stone. During the original Speak Now album promotion, in an interview called Taylor Swift versus the Bot, which basically involved Taylor pulling out quick-fire random questions from a box. One of the questions that they asked was that if she could be any other person for a day, who would it be? And Taylor then went on to say, I would be Emma Stone. She's one of my really, really good friends. And this has got fans thinking, because it kind of like echoes the lyric between you and me, sometimes I wish I was her, from When Emma Falls in Love. So a lot of people have kind of all come to the agreement that that is the Emma that is referenced. It also kind of like fits the timeline, it fits what was going on in her life. So, however, when Emma Stone was asked on Graham Norton if she is indeed the Emma from the Taylor Swift song, she basically just said, you'll have to ask Taylor.
I think that the chances of there being another Emma in Taylor's life during this time is very, very slim, especially when she was kind of referencing her during that era. And when you go back to even just what we mentioned about Electric Touch, with her kind of talking about people that influenced her during that time, Emma Stone was massively involved in Taylor's life, and their kind of friendship had formed, you know, towards the end of the kind of Fearless era and early Speak Now era. So it definitely makes sense. And it would be very, very cool if it was about her.
I think so. In my head, I agree with the fandom interpreted lyric.
The rumour. But I guess we'll never know until Taylor confirms, which is probably unlikely.
Right. Also, I like this song because it really reminds me, like, it's strange to hear it now because you think of, like, the Dorotheas and the Augusts and the, you know, Betty and James and Inez from the folklore kind of era. But this is very quintessential early days Taylor. I mean, if you look back at a lot of unreleased songs and, a lot, you know, debut songs, we have very...
Brought Up This Way.
Exactly. References to all of these characters and friends in her life. And I think this one... Obviously, we had a bit of a departure, but then we came back to it finally with this in the vault tracks. And I think that's so lovely that there is a shout out. Whoever Emma is, which, you know, if it is Emma Stone, I'm sure they were very grateful for this song because it is a very, very beautiful one.
Yeah, you know, you definitely wouldn't be offended.
No, like you wouldn't be calling it cheap songwriting, yeah.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. So next is obviously track 19, and that is I Can See You. And what's interesting about this is that the music video for this was filmed in Liverpool in the spring of 2023, just after the opening dates of the Eras Tour. And there was basically a few photos from when they were filming and recording that were leaked online that led fans to speculate about a Speak Now Taylor's version music video, due to Taylor obviously being seen with that 13 on her hand, curly hair, and wearing that Speak Now World Tour opening dress. And I remember at the time how wild it was that she kind of just flew into Liverpool, was there for like
3 days,
an evening, and then kind of flew back out. It's also interesting about that music video is that Taylor Lautner, Joey King and Presley Cash are all featured, and they obviously all played prominent parts in the original Speak Now era, featuring in the Mean music video, which is obviously Joey King and Presley Cash and Taylor Lautner obviously inspiring songs like Back to December. And what's really nice is that they came back and made an appearance during obviously the I Can See You music video, and also an appearance at the Eras tour to celebrate the release of the Speak Now Taylor's Version album and the I Can See You music video. And I really love that music video because it's so symbolic of Taylor going back and kind of like reclaiming her kind of past, and the fact that people from that era kind of help her, I just think it's so cool. And there's something really quite sweet about right at the end when she does kind of look back and sees
it's such a moment,
kind of past it kind of exploded, and kind of she's unfortunately lost her past but been able to kind of take a new element of it with her, and she kind of, it's that glimpse back that every time I watch it I'm like, oh my god.
I know.
And no, I really love this music video of how symbolic it is for the entire Taylor's Version process, not only just the Speak Now era in itself.
Oh, it is such a good music video, and it's got me really like kind of like nostalgic for Taylor's versions of it all.
Yes, it does.
I know we still have two left.
Yes.
And I really would love more little things like this. I know it's asking for a lot because she owes us nothing. These are personal projects for her to kind of like reclaim her work rightfully, and we kind of like support her as we can. Exactly, for fans it's very fun time because we get to see all of these little tidbits from the era and these Vault tracks, and that is enough. But honestly, moments like this is what I live for. And to be fair to her, she has given us little moments from each of the Taylor's Version in one way or another. And for Speak Now to have this one, I think is probably one of my favourite moments from like the Taylor's Version project. It was such an amazing, nostalgic, and like you said, to get those people back on board, loved it so much.
It was so cool.
Yeah.
And just
all grown up.
With, like, Presley Cash had like three little stars on her cheek, which is obviously 3 stars for the Speak Now album, but she was also dressed as like a star to earn money in Mean
exactly.
to then go to college. That like the references were just very, very cool. I was kind of a big fan. And then even like Joey King seeing that little dress that she wore in the music video and her kind of getting a bit choked up looking at that, it's perfect.
They did such a good job. Props to them. They really did, capturing that nostalgic feel and then like breaking Taylor out of the vault. Next up we have the only other official feature on Speak Now Taylor's Version, which is Castles Crumbling. Despite many people believing that this song was going to become probably a stable and staple part of the Eras tour during the European leg, because Hayley Williams was going to be joining Taylor alongside Paramore as an opener, sadly it didn't at all. This is something that you and I debated in all of our like predicting what was coming next for Europe, for our shows. I think this was mainly because so many people thought that it would follow in the footsteps of Nobody No Crime, which became part of the set list when Haim became part of like, you know, the opening acts.
And Phoebe Bridgers with Nothing New.
Very true.
Then became like a mainstay on the set list while she was an opener. Exactly.
So it kind of like created this pattern, but unfortunately Castles Crumbling didn't make it, and it has only been played a total of twice live. One of them July 28th 2023 in California of Taylor alone, and the other June 22nd 2024 in London with Hayley Williams, finally after all that time. I guess we missed out on a little moment, but I kind of get it because Castles Crumbling is quite like a sad, somber moment, and to add it suddenly in the Speak Now
and not
era.
Like a big fan. That it wasn't, I don't know, it didn't, even things like Nothing New were still quite, I don't know, I feel like was potentially more well known than maybe Castles Crumbling. And also I would have been fuming
she would have
was on the set
and
list,
not Long Live. I would know.
I would have been fuming.
This
like,
is
whatever, take it off, is what it is. I'm still gonna be upset about it.
But don't replace
it with this.
Exactly. No, yeah. I completely agree with that.
So I'm kind of glad.
Yeah.
But also it's a shame because it would be a very cool moment, and it would be cool to get to see like, you know, a different kind of production element, you know, with like Florence and
True. That's true.
But so we did miss out on that, but selfishly, I'm kind of glad because it meant that then
I get that.
Long Live wasn't replaced. Next is track 21, which is obviously Foolish One. And interestingly, this track is produced by Aaron Dessner, who also interestingly produced Electric Touch and When Emma Falls in Love, the 2 other Vault tracks. Jack actually produced the remaining Vault tracks, and then Christopher Rowe produced all of the rest of the standard and deluxe album.
Finally, for Speak Now Taylor's Version, we have Timeless. This title, this song, along with some of the other Vault track names, to be honest with you, like Castles Crumbling, like Foolish One, had floated around for a long time. It was known to be an unreleased song, but it had never leaked, so no one actually knew what the song was going to be about. Also, this one in particular has another little fact to it, because during a lot of the early days in the Reputation era, which was, you know, it was like the Wild West out there for fans, we were clinging on to everything.
It was clinging,
and anything.
There was always an image of something that was supposedly from a new Taylor Swift music video that then everyone clung to, and then everyone was like linking like major moments that were happening to like the planet that was supposedly Taylor was going to be involved in, like the solar eclipse.
Exactly.
It was just wild, wasn't it?
So during that time, there were theories to what her sixth-studio album may be called. One of them, as you just mentioned, could have been Eclipse. Another one was Timeless, because there was like this website which kind of like had the supposed lyric "had nothing but a time we never had" up on there. So a lot of people thought the Reputation was going to be called Timeless. However, no, in the end, all that this turned out to be was a Vault song from Speak Now.
It's similar with things like Karma.
Yes.
All of that time.
Oh God! Don't open that can of worms, Cameron.
And then and now obviously there's just a track called that, and hopefully it kind of puts it to bed, but it seems not to have. But anyways.
Well, perhaps one day, but not today. Yes. Perhaps we'll get to that during our Reputation episode, but yes, it does follow a similar line, to be honest with you. Apart from that, Taylor also seems to have been partially inspired or wanted to dedicate this song to her grandparents, who she features in the lyric video, which contains several photos and videos of her maternal grandparents, either like together or in different photos of them throughout their lives, which is very nice. She likes to do that every so often. Like, we've got songs for both of them. We've also now got Timeless of them together. So it's kind of like nice that we're in on this.
Very sweet. I really like the one thing I do enjoy about the Taylor's versions, and even just like recently with the lyric videos in general, is the kind of thing
they've stepped up the game.
How they've definitely stepped up the game. I remember Love Story Taylor's version was the first one where it really was like, it had all the pictures of Taylor and fans from that era, and then kind of since then they've kind of either had, you know, tour footage that we've never really had in official HD format, or they've had just really cool kind of references to stuff, or videos or pictures. No, I really, really like them, and this is definitely a really good one. So next, even though we have technically finished the track list for Speak Now Taylor's version, obviously there is a
hidden track,
lonely kind of lost track for Speak Now, which obviously, if this was a movie, which was originally on the deluxe edition of Speak Now, however was moved off and put as a more fearless track and never put on the Speak Now Taylor's version for this. So basically, the potential reason why it was released as a droplet to celebrate the start of the Eras tour and then reclassified as a fearless track was that basically because it's the only song on Speak Now that had a co-writer, who's Martin Johnson, and it basically meant that by not featuring it on the Speak Now Taylor's version album, it would mean that Speak Now Taylor's version was entirely self-written. But what's interesting, though, despite it not having a permanent home on Speak Now or anywhere, it is technically the first Speak Now track that we ever heard re-recorded, and also has been played live only once on June 23rd, 2023 in Minneapolis. And as I said, unfortunately does not have a physical home as of now. Potentially one day it might. I think what would be quite cool is to potentially release like a 7-inch single or something of it, or a CD single or something, just so it has.
I don't think it's going to happen.
But I don't think it's going to happen. I think unfortunately the demand for this song maybe isn't there anyway. It's on streaming, so it's not. It does exist.
Justice for if this was a movie. It's grammatically incorrect.
It will always be a Speak Now track for me. But I have created a playlist. I've created a playlist of Speak Now Taylor's version, and it is there in its original tracklist order.
Yeah.
And it will always be a Speak Now track for me. It is not a fearless track. I will not accept it. But I can kind of understand why. But the thing that always really, really, really bugs me is that I thought, okay, the promotion for Speak Now Taylor's version is all going to be, this is self-written. What was it mentioned once?
I know. I think
all of that.
I think because I get it, but I don't get it. Just a little rant here at the end. Taylor is sometimes so like picky with things, which I get, because I'm like that as well. I'd like everything to be perfected, and if she wants to make it a completely self-written album, that's cool with me. Chuck that onto Fearless. I get it. But then you can't be doing that and then not completing the 1989 like combo, you know, outfits on the Eras tour, or singing every song,
Yeah.
or you know what I mean? Like, there's
Yeah.
other things that she leaves so open-ended that I'm like, Taylor, make up your
Or
mind.
Midnight's not ever having a complete edition.
Exactly. Or things like that. Or like suddenly names appearing on albums and then not appearing on albums, but then appearing again on albums, which, you know, I get. They don't all have to look the same, but... And then she goes out of her way to do this. But, you know, it is what it is. At least we got it. At least it
And it
exists.
was a nice surprise at the time.
Yeah.
It was a very nice surprise at the
And
time.
it gave us a hint
Especially
towards what Speak Now was kind of going to be like. So that was good as well.
And it was a solid... I thought it was a solid
Re-recording.
recreation.
Yeah,
Perfect
me too.
re-record. And we got the Hunger Games tracks.
True.
We also got a kind
Glad we
of,
got that. Yeah.
You know, From the Vault, unreleased Lover track. So, you know,
Yes.
it spawned positiveness.
Will we ever
as well
get
as also
Need,
being a
though?
little sad.
It opened up...
Fingers crossed one day.
That kind of like little droplet opened up so many questions.
Yes, it opened up like a bit of a kind of like major loophole in the Taylor's version world, because it's like, okay, is this now going to be a recurring theme? And it just appears to have not kind of ever really happened again.
No.
We're kind of at the 2-year,
Yes.
2-year anniversary of it.
Yeah, we are.
And, you know, potentially we might get something else, because there's definitely other tracks that belong in that kind of world where they didn't have a home.
Well,
things like I Don't
Crazier.
Want It Forever, Crazier, that potentially might now have one. Because what's weird is something like Sweeter Than Fiction was technically one of those songs that didn't have a home,
And now it does.
but then was given one.
Yeah.
So
Oh, I
but then it
am
also doesn't at the same time.
I am
It's
excited
weird.
to see those little kind of like songs that are like little droplets throughout eras. Where will they end up? Obviously, we
'Cause
know they can only end. Well, I say they can only end up one place or another, but she could always pull another More Fearless on us, or More Speak Now,
Exactly,
or More
yeah.
whatever.
So, and but then what's weird is something like Today Was a Fairy Tale.
Yeah, that has its
They've given it
place.
home.
Yeah. Oh, see, I get it. It's a project that is in constant development because, you know, things started one way and have gone another way. Obviously, because streaming nowadays, you know, you can just chuck things out whenever.
And also the success of the Taylor's version.
Yeah.
And the kind of reaction.
Yeah.
No, it makes sense, but it still bugs me a little bit. But
Yeah.
anyways, still interesting. And on Swiftly Spoken, whenever talking about Speak Now,
Without
we will
making a
always
mention. Yeah.
include, if this was a movie, it will always be a Speak Now track for us on Swiftly Spoken. But we've obviously come to the end of this episode and all 22/23 tracks on Speak Now. We hope that you found it interesting. This is part of a series that we're doing, and each month we're going through each album and all of its tracks and kind of giving a deep dive and little interesting facts on each of the tracks. So far we've obviously done Debut, Fearless, and obviously this one, Speak Now. So if you haven't checked out the previous two, definitely go check those out. And as ever, if you're listening on YouTube, if you're not currently subscribed, we'd love it if you'd subscribe. If you also enjoyed this episode, please give it a thumbs up. Let us know your thoughts about this episode in the comments, and any other fun facts for any or all of the tracks that we've discussed today. If you're listening on an audio-only format, Spotify, Apple, or anything similar, we'd also really appreciate it if you rated us, if you enjoyed this episode or enjoy our podcast in general. And as ever, if you are wanting to keep up to date with all things Swiftly Spoken, make sure to follow us over on Instagram. Our handle is @SwiftlySpokenPodcast. But thank you again for listening, and we will speak soon.